I'm Roger DeRose. At Kessler Foundation, we're committed to changing the lives of people with disabilities through research and employment strategies. And that's why we're proud to support programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Hackensack University Health Network, County College of Morris, connecting learning and life, PSE&G, committed to improving New Jersey's economy and strengthening its communities, MD Advantage Insurance Company of New Jersey, Wells Fargo, Celgene Corporation, committed to improving the lives of patients worldwide, and by Kessler Foundation, changing the lives of people with disabilities. Promotional support provided by the Star Ledger, powering NJ.com, and by the New Jersey Business and Industry Association and its monthly magazine, New Jersey Business.
This is One-on-One.
When you first heard that they were doing Charlie Rose and Gayle King, didn't you go, what?
People like laughing at others, so I don't mind if the other is me.
See, you go right into the character. That's what it is.
I'm bringing families together a half an hour each week. Man, I'm doing something special.
And so I do feel successful.
Welcome, I'm Steve Adubato. Welcome to the Tisch WNET studio here at Lincoln Center. Back by popular demand, we have Adam Bryant, who is the author of Quick and Nimble. He is also the author of a terrific column in the New York Times twice a week now, called The Corner Office, one of my favorite columns twice a week. Listen, everything about business and leadership and important stuff. And this is all about how we need to lead innovation, the culture of innovation. One of the first things you say in this, by the way, interviewed how many CEOs and leaders?
More than 200 for that book.
Okay, I'm going to jump right into it. What's your problem with email? And what does that have to do with getting in the way of innovation?
Well, I think first off that to get innovation right, you have to get the culture right. And culture is about the relationships that colleagues have with each other. Can they communicate? And you have to get that right before you can innovate, I think. And email is a particular problem. I have a chapter called The Hazards of Email. Email was invented as this great productivity tool, but I actually think it's a terrible communication tool. The key phrase to me is that things get lost in translation. I send you what to me seems like a very simple and straightforward email, but I get a blast back from you and thinking, what was Steve thinking about what I was trying to say? And then I get my back up and suddenly we chew up an entire afternoon, whereas if I wandered down the hall and talked to you in person, we'd solve whatever problem in 60 seconds and high-five each other and walk away. And just email is just so problematic. As one CEO said to me too, email taps into a really bad part of our brain, which is the part that always wants to have the last word. And so you get these, you get these CC loops and people start taking sides. I just talked to a lot of CEOs who have really clear rules in their organizations to kind of rip out that email culture. It's just one example. You can't argue over email. One back and forth, and then pick up the phone or walk down the hall.
But it's interesting. I agree with a lot of that because arguing back and forth makes no sense. It's got to be face to face. But there is a place in the culture of innovation because I'm not the only one, but I know some other wacky CEOs who will send emails at wacky times.
Right.
You can't be picking up the phone and calling people.
Yeah.
So sending emails to share information or have an idea. You okay with that?
Yeah, the simple rule I've developed is that when anything is at stake, whenever there is a possibility for misunderstanding what the person is saying, don't do it.
Don't do it.
If it's a simple transactional, here's some information, we had this conversation, this is how I remembered it, just to get it on the page, all that stuff, it's fine. It's just when something can get lost in translation, don't do it.
And the other thing, in terms of being lost in translation, and by the way, so much of what is in the book, Quick and Nimble, really has to do with communication, which I'm fascinated by, the art of. You talk about the importance of one of the keys to the culture of innovation is to have what you're calling adult conversations.
Yeah.
Describe that.
Just another phrase for frank discussions, giving people tough feedback. I think most managers literally will go out of their way to avoid having these discussions. They are stressful, but they don't want to do them. People rationalize away. It's like, I got too much to do. maybe they were having a bad day, you know, maybe I'll bring it up 9 months from now in the performance review, and then the person's head, you know, explodes. What are you bringing this up for? And so I really come to believe the importance of just having the conversations, because a lot of stuff, it's just about freeing up the energy. I mean, if you and I work together, we're going to have disagreements, but if you get it out in the open and you discuss it, that suddenly releases all that energy. We can get back to our work. And there is an art to it. I mean, I heard
What do you mean, art?
I heard this great expression from one CEO that you don't go over the net. It's like a tennis or volleyball metaphor, that I never make statements that carry assumptions about what's motivating you to do something or not do something. I just talk about my perception of it, how, you know, I see you doing this. This is how it makes me feel. You come in 20 minutes late for work every day, Stephen. I know you do. That makes me feel like you don't care. That's a very different statement than me saying it seems like you don't care, because then you're going to say, hey, Adam, who are you to say whether I care or not? So
Right.
that little distinction can make a really big difference.
There's an art form, as you said.
Yeah.
The other one of the tips, interesting. How about this one, of the many tips that are in here? It's about, how about this one? The hazards, a simple plan, I'm sorry, because there's so many tips. The simple plan, I thought to myself, well, life is complicated, business is complicated, getting more and more complicated, and Adam says you need a simple plan.
Yeah.
That seems like a contradiction.
Well, it's a leader's job to figure out the simple plan. If they're working at a complicated company in a complicated industry, I think a leader owes their employees the moment where they can stand up in front of everybody and say, this is where we're going and this is how we're going to get there. And these are the 3 things that we're going to use to measure our progress. Because I don't think most people can remember more than 3 things. There's a great expression, if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have priorities.
What's important? Everything? Well, that means nothing's important, right?
Exactly. And the really important benefit of having a simple plan is that everybody can understand how the work they are doing contributes to the team's goals. Because I do think we're wired to contribute. We want to be part of a team. We want to help the team win. You know, in sports, the scoreboard is always clear. We can always figure out how, you know, we're role players. That doesn't happen at work often because the plan isn't clear, so everybody starts pursuing their own agenda. And that's when you get silos, you know, the different departments doing their own thing. And as one CEO said to me, silos are what topple great companies. And I really believe that. And silos can happen also on an individual basis. I can be a silo. I'm doing my own thing, you're doing your own thing. And the best sort of counterweight to that is the CEO saying, this is our simple plan.
The other thing that I want you to talk about, which is embedded throughout the book, even though you don't call it one of the tips or tools to creating a culture of innovation. But I think about this a lot. And you and I have talked about this. Because by the way, you can check out Adam's stuff, his great columns in the New York Times. I write for the other paper. Yeah, like there's the Ledger, the Star Ledger, and there's the New York Times, right? Right?
Equal competitors.
Exactly.
Yes,
That's the way I like to look at it.
You
and I
should.
write about business, you write about business, you write about leadership. But I sit there and I'm looking at your stuff and I go, wow, I really like his stuff because I'm always learning from you. But the one thing that both of us think about a lot, but is embedded in here, is the issue of passion. And here's the thing I'm trying to get at. How much passion is too much passion on the part of the CEO? Because I'll often think, you push, you push, you push. Sometimes do some of us push too hard? And can we expect that others around us have the same level of intensity bordering on, something a little unhealthy? You know what I'm talking about?
Of course, yeah.
What do you pick up here? Because we want people to care,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
takes a little bit of craziness to be the CEO sometimes.
Yeah, and what I've realized over time that a lot of leadership is incredibly hard, and a lot of leadership is about hitting the right balance point. A lot of the toughest aspects of leadership are tough because they're essentially paradox, like finding the right balance point. And so, yes, you do want to be passionate. You do want to sort of set the tone and create that energy, but you can be so passionate that you get ahead of everybody and you look behind and they're way back there. So I've heard a lot of CEOs talk about how they've had to learn how to slow down a bit and communicate and over-communicate to make sure that everybody knows why we're doing what we're doing and why you're so fired up about where we're going.
But you have to create a sense of urgency.
Yes.
Which sounds like a contradiction.
It is, though. That's the thing. Is it this or is it that? Yes. That's why leadership is so hard.
And the other part of the book that I find fascinating is you talk about those who want to be popular and liked are in trouble in leadership.
Yeah, because you have to make the decisions that are right for the team, and you can't be so empathetic. I've heard a lot of CEOs talk about it. You can't be so concerned about morale and how people are feeling that you lose sight of the vision and where you need to take the team. Again, another tricky balance point, right?
Balance.
You have to have good antenna, you know, get that sixth sense for the mood of the place, but you also have to say, look, maybe people aren't happy, but this is where we're going. And if you're not on the team, get off the team.
Good stuff. Adam Bryant is the author of Quick and Nimble, and he's also the author of a wonderful column in the New York Times called The Corner Office. And you interview fascinating people, and you take that information and you package it in a way and present it in a way that we can all learn from. I want to thank you for joining us.
Thanks,
you have an
Steve.
open invitation here on One-on-One.
Always happy to
We
go
always
back.
learn. Thanks.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this.
If you would like more information on this program, or if you'd like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Visit us online at oneonone.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD, and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
Sarah Lewis is the author of The Rise, Creativity, The Gift of Failure, and The Search for Mastery. Good to see you.
Great to be here.
The premise of this book is amazing. Not a lot of people have taken on learning from failure.
Yes.
Why'd you take it on?
You know, for me, it was an idea that I started to think about as a teenager, actually. I was thinking about the gift of failure when I experienced it myself. I lost in this painting competition, a national competition. I had won 2 years earlier, at age 14, and won a computer, which is for a teenager is a big deal. And to lose, it taught me things about myself that I then realized could have come no other way, you know?
Yeah.
And I wrote about it for my college application essay to go to Harvard, and then started looking at the life stories of so many iconic individuals and groundbreaking achievements, and realized that this sometimes is the foundation.
Such as?
Well, I looked at the life of Martin Luther King, for example, saw that he received C's twice in public speaking class. You know, and thought, wait a minute, we're telling these,
this is great.
You know, these sanitized stories, and
Hey, Lincoln lost a few elections.
just a couple. You know?
Like 10.
Yeah, so it seemed to be a requirement, and I thought, let's talk about this more, and I wanted to write a book about it.
You know, a couple other people. By the way, so I always say full disclosure. How about this one? I'll never forget, people say, oh, on your bio, I saw that you were the youngest person elected to the state legislature in New Jersey. And I'll say, yeah, I was the youngest person to lose his seat in the state legislature 2 years later. And I learned so much from the loss more than the win.
That's right.
Same principle. Yep. How about this one? Cézanne.
Cézanne.
Go.
Paul Cézanne.
By the way, I'm not comparing myself to Cézanne. Go ahead.
No, but Paul Cézanne saw his works in his own mind as potential failures, as likely failures. He only signed less than 10% of his paintings.
Because?
He didn't feel that they yet merited his goal, you know? You can go on and on. William Faulkner, right, published The Sound and the Fury, and didn't yet think that was what he wanted it to be, and so he rewrote sections of it. 16 years later, publishes those sections in an appendix to the book.
Jackie Joyner-Kersee.
Yes, she, fails in one competition in her mind to receive the gold, and the near win of getting silver pushes her to achieve something at the gold level that hadn't ever been done before in terms of the heptathlon and her score there. There's this propulsion that comes from not quite hitting your goal that really is transformative.
J.K. Rowling.
J.K. Rowling, right? As she said in the Harvard commencement speech address she gave, rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life.
Say that again.
Rock bottom can become the solid foundation on which you rebuild your life.
Wow. Wow. This is the other. How about this? Samuel Moore
Yeah.
was a painter for 26 years.
That's right.
And then?
Invented the telegraph out of the stretcher bars of the canvas itself. He literally transformed it. So President Obama in the Oval Office has a telegraph model of this failed painting, which is now the telegraph, and founded the whole communications revolution.
Hey, how about this? Barack Obama runs for,
Right.
you don't realize this, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you do.
Yeah.
Barack Obama ran for Congress
Yeah.
in Chicago
Yeah.
and lost a race that no one talks about.
That's right.
And he says he learned more about politics and what he needed to do to win, and soon thereafter won a seat in the United States Senate, and then something else happened after that. I can't remember.
Yeah, who knows?
Right?
Exactly, exactly. It feels like it's almost a requisite for groundbreaking achievement, you know? And it's just about time that we have a conversation more publicly.
How open were people to talk to you about their own failures in the book?
Well, in the end, I interviewed over 150 individuals for this book. In the beginning, it was more difficult because I was only using the word failure. But as soon as I started to frame it in the larger context of life as it's lived out, I realized that other terms had to come into play, because as soon as you go through an experience where you learn from failure, you tend to call it something else.
Such as?
A transformation, a learning experience, a trial, and setback. Lots of those. So those words came up in the conversation far more than failure, even with people who, we look at as having classic failure stories. And the term failure, though, we should remember, was never really meant to apply to human life. It was a term that was just a credit rating, really, in the 19th century. It meant bankruptcy. It meant that your business was finished. But I think it's always been a force fit for human life, because life is dynamic, it's ongoing, The term failure was meant to suggest that something had a dead end, but the human spirit isn't like that.
What has this done for you? I mean, it's so interesting. You were telling me before we got on the air that we're at 66 in Broadway. You may be able to tell when you see the sign over your shoulder. Yeah. You were born and you raised right around here. Yeah. You know this neighborhood. Yeah. You know New York City well. It's a tough place, right? Mm-hmm. You've experienced some degree of setback.
That's
or
right.
Some setbacks.
That's right.
What has this book done for you?
Given me so much strength and excitement about embracing all of what life can bring to you, and knowing that you can always do something incredible with it. It's given me more fearlessness.
Fearlessness?
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you the example of Martin Luther King, who I spoke about earlier. So he got those C's in public speaking. He developed this verbal tic later in his life, right, as he was speaking. And Harry Belafonte asked him how he overcame this tic. And he talks about the importance of surrender. Surrender not as giving up, but giving over to just what's going to happen, and for him it was meeting his end at some point. And I think that for me, I really see the kind of beautiful surrender in my life, not just to circumstance, because I now know that I can do what I need to do with it, to always turn it into an advantage,
You got a great attitude.
Thank you.
And I have a feeling you're going to help an awful lot of people with the book. The Rise, Creativity, The Gift of Failure, and The Search for Mastery. The author is Sarah Lewis, and we wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on public television.
Pleasure.
That's why we have this place, to have people like you here. Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this from the Tisch WNET studio in the heart of Lincoln Center. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you would like more information on this program, or if you'd like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Visit us online at oneonone.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD, and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
Dr. Eric Sanderson is a senior conservation ecologist at Wildlife Conservation Society. Good to see you.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. Manhattan 2409. I hear that. First of all, it's an odd name, but more importantly, it's an important initiative. It's a website.
It's a website. It's
Describe it.
It's an online forum for designing the ecology of New York City, creating sustainability and resilience.
That sounds great, but make it real, because I think we're going to show some visuals.
Yeah,
so we're here at 66th and Broadway. You can see the subway sign right over your corner, over your shoulder, right? Mm-hmm. We're here.
Right.
It is what it is.
It is what it is, but it hasn't always been like this.
What do you mean?
I wrote a book about Manhattan when it was Mannahatta, the island of many hills. As you can imagine, 400 years ago when the Europeans first arrived, and there wasn't a street here, there wasn't any of these buildings, there was forests here and streams and meadows. It was actually a very interesting shrubland just over here, serpentine grassland, an endangered species that weren't endangered at that time because there was lots of room for all the species, all the wildlife.
So what's the objective in all this? What are you trying to do?
Well, what's the most important question of our time? What makes everything possible? It's our relationship to nature and what nature gives us, how it sustains our lives. And we know that as a civilization, humanity is using more resources than nature has to give. We've been doing that for 100 years. We know there's more people now than there's ever been, 7 billion people, and more of them are living in cities before. So Mannahatta 2409 is trying to to put a seed in New York City. It's about how do we plan for the future? How do we make our cities places that are going to last, not for next year, not for the next mayor's term, but for hundreds of years to come.
For 2409?
So Henry Hudson comes in 1609 to Manhattan. 2009 is the 400-year anniversary. 2409 is 400 years from now. The idea is to sort of stretch people's imaginations and to actually engage people in imagining a future that's going to work, a future that's going to work for them and for the environment.
So, Doctor, people go on the site. What do they see?
Yeah. So they go on the site, they can see the ecosystems of any block in Manhattan today, where ecosystems include the streets and the buildings as well as the parks. They can see the ecosystems of that area 400 years ago, and then they can change them. They can actually paint them. They can paint green roofs on the building. So this is the splash page on the site. It rotates through visions that people have put in of Manhattan. So they can actually change the ecosystems, and then they can see their environmental performance. They can see how it changes the carbon flows, the water flows, the biodiversity, and the population.
Why would they want to do that?
Because we need to imagine how we make cities and environments that work.
But are you trying to change public policy? I mean, Mayor de Blasio, all of a sudden says, hey, I heard what these guys are doing. I think I need to get my environmental team engaged in this discussion, along with Governor Cuomo and others in the legislature and the city council. Let's make some policy decisions. Is that what it's about, or just to get people on a website to know what's possible?
No, that's one part of it. Hurricane Sandy.
What does Hurricane Sandy have to do with this?
What Hurricane Sandy was so damaging because the wetlands and the beaches that used to protect the city are no longer there. There's buildings in the way. There used to be fringing wetlands all around Manhattan.
What does it mean, fringing? Explain it to folks who may not understand from an ecological point of view.
Yeah, like if you've ever been to the South Shore of Long Island or the shore of New Jersey, you see barrier beaches and you see wetlands behind them, right? So a hurricane comes, it hits the beach, the water washes over, goes in the salt marsh, and then drains back into the ocean.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
No harm. That's right. We've changed that. We've changed it over a 400-year period. It's going to take a long time to fix that. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen just in Mayor de Blasio's term. It's going to require us all to work together to imagine the future and then to set in motion that future.
And you want people to go on the site, see what's possible, and then do what?
And to share their visions, and then to create a vision, and then to share it.
With whom?
So, with everybody else. So, we need ways to crowdsource our future. This is a way to crowdsource for everybody to participate in imagining the future. The idea is you go on the website, you create your idea of what you want for your block or for your neighborhood or for your part of the city. It's Manhattan now, but we're in the process of spreading it over the rest of New York City. And then you can work privately for as long as you want, and then you can market public. And then everybody can see your vision. And we can have a competition. Who can create the vision that has the less greenhouse gas emissions? Who has the vision that has the less stormwater drainage? Who has the vision that has the most species diversity? And then those visions can talk to each other. How many people do we want in the city? How many jobs do we want to have? How does that relate to biodiversity? How does that relate to carbon emissions? How does that relate to stormwater drainage? One of the hard things about the environment and nature is that it's many parts that are all connected together. There are people that focus on this part and this part and this part. My job as an ecologist is to show how the parts are connected together.
Why don't we hear any discussion from Mayor de Blasio? This is not a criticism of the mayor because we didn't hear from Mayor Bloomberg. Why don't we hear city officials having major policy discussions about this and saying we have a serious issue here in New York City, or at least in this borough, pretty significant borough, Manhattan. And if we don't have this discussion, bad things are going to happen, because you're about to tell me bad things have been happening, are going to get worse. Because otherwise, why would we do this?
Well, that's the standard environmental take, is to show you what the bad things are and to point to what needs to be fixed. Just like social justice advocates, just like everyone else. This website is allowing you to proactively imagine the future and to do it not in some crazy way, but actually to see the results. Show me the data. This website shows you the data.
Yeah, but here's my job is to ask questions from a devil's advocate perspective. And here it is. But here it is. Yeah. There's development going on all around us.
That's right.
And that development going on around us is being framed based on jobs, based on the economy of Manhattan. There are groundbreakings taking place every day where we celebrate more concrete, more development, because it equals more jobs. And you're sitting there saying, wait a minute, is that what we want? You're not saying it isn't, But you're asking the question, if that is the direction we go in, there are some serious problems. And I just don't hear that other discussion.
Well, the underlying thing that, I think you're getting at is that the ecology of our world and the economies of our world are disconnected to each other.
They are.
And they need to be connected together. And they need to be connected in real ways that mean decisions in everyday's lives. I mean, Hurricane Sandy is an example of how it works and how it doesn't work. What's going to happen because of Hurricane Sandy? Many people's flood insurance rates are going to go up. That's the ecology.
Do you think that's a wake-up call? That should be, Hurricane Sandy should have been a wake-up call.
It is a wake-up call. I disagree with you a little bit. The Bloomberg administration, they had Plan NYC, they had the Million Trees Initiative. They were talking about some of these issues and pushing it forward the way they can. The de Blasio administration, we're waiting to hear what they're going to do on their environmental
agenda. So you think that the elected officials in the city have made this a priority, and you like the direction we're going in?
There's great people in the Parks Department. There's people in the DEP that are doing the right thing. There's a new collaboration between the city and the Park Service about Jamaica Bay.
Okay.
So,
I stand corrected, but
there are things going on.
I just don't hear a lot of speeches about it. You saying action is taking place, and that's more important.
That's right.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We'll keep talking off the air.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating 25 years of broadcast excellence in partnership with St. Joseph's Healthcare System. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Hackensack University Health Network, County College of Morris, PSE&G, MD Advantage Insurance Company of New Jersey, Wells Fargo, Celgene Corporation, and by Kessler Foundation. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
This healthcare message is brought to you by MD Advantage Insurance Company of New Jersey.
Choosing a new family doctor can be confusing. Check with your health insurer to see which physicians near you participate with your plan. Find out which hospitals the doctor uses and who covers when the doctor is away. And remember to schedule an appointment with your new doctor in advance to fill out any paperwork without the added stress of being sick.